You said, and I quote, sometimes people just need to be punched in the face. Is that still your opinion, that political disputes can sometimes and often only be resolved by violence?
No, I don't always agree with that. I don't believe in political violence. I've made that very clear. But sometimes people do need, theoretically speaking, sir, I get it. It's about character assassination for you. That's the way this game is played. I understand it. And you are making this about you, which is fine, but that doesn't keep me as Secretary of Homeland Security.
Character assassination when you were the one lauding the assault. Who do you think started that character assassination?
An extraordinary moment yesterday for the confirmation hearing for Senator Markwayne Mullin, President Trump's new pick to lead the Department of Homeland Security. We'll have more exchanges for you later in the show, and we'll look at whether Mullin has enough support to get the job. Also on Capitol Hill yesterday, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, who was grilled about the war in Iran, some of the president's claims, and what she was actually doing in Fulton County, Georgia, during a raid of an elections office. We'll show you what she had to say. Plus, we'll dig into a new piece from the Wall Street Journal editorial board making the case against the Republican-led Save America Act, a bill the president has repeatedly pushed as critical to combat alleged voter fraud. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Thursday, March 19th. With us, we have the co-host of our 9 a.m. hour, staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass, and CEO and co-founder of Axios, Jim Vandehei, is here with us this morning. So, Joe, this war escalating, gas prices and economic pressure around the world as a result.
It certainly is. And war of words on Capitol Hill escalating quite a bit there between Senator Markwayne Mullins and the chairman of the committee. Jim Vandehei, you covered the Hill for quite some time. I think we may have even met up on the Hill, if I recall, many years ago. That exchange between Markwayne Mullins, I understand how the game's played here, so-called character assassination. He was cheering for the criminal assault and battery of Rand Paul. And it's just, I guess it's just these days. I don't know. Was Jackson Brown would sing these days? I don't get it. Why can't he just apologize for a really stupid, insensitive, and misguided statement that he made?
I mean, it's one of the rules of when White House officials appear before Congress. Apologize for nothing, be combative, assume that the President of the United States is watching you. That's why so many of these hearings, you would hope they're a little more substantive, and it's not that there's not moments of substance. It's just so much theater, right, so much pageantry, because they're so self-conscious about appearing tough, appearing like they'll defend the president in any scenario, under any circumstance. You don't really get to the truth about, okay, how would he actually run the Department of Homeland Security at a time of great tension, when it's not even being funded, when you have a lot of attacks and an unpopularity among ICE. You have some really big philosophical decisions to be made about how do you balance, protecting people's individual liberties with cracking down on people who are here illegally. These are big, meaty topics, but they tend to turn instantly theatrical. You saw that with the debate over the hearings on Iran as well, about whether or not the president knew that there was an imminent threat and whose job it is to actually say that you have intelligence that's an imminent threat. I don't find any of these to be all that useful, to be honest, because we all kind of know what the president knew going into this war, and we know it was a war of choice, and we know that Israel was going to strike first, and we know that we had pretty much decapitated their nuclear capabilities, and we knew that they still wanted to reconstitute them. None of those things are surprising or new, and nobody is really debating who studies this whether or not the president just decided that now is the time to go and make a move against the advice of a lot of his advisors.
Yeah, which, of course, sounds an awful lot like Afghanistan, where just about every general and admiral that Joe Biden talked to said, don't take all of your troops out of Afghanistan. Same thing here. The general's very worried about going to war against Iran. And yet, that's what happens when you don't listen to absolutely anybody on an issue. But John Lemire, first of all, a couple points. If you're talking to somebody who's going to be running an agency that many Americans believe responsible for the execution-style shooting of Americans in the street and brute violence, it's probably best not to have as your DHS chairman a guy who cheered on the assault and battery, the brutalizing, the breaking of, 6 ribs? It's probably best not to have a senator who had cheered that on when it happened and still has no problem doing that. I mean, you're going to have somebody that cheers on violence, a guy that is at least polite enough to take off his ring before he was going to go down and try to beat up a union member. By the way, a Boston guy that I don't think any of us would mess around with. But
I know
it
a lot
just,
of guys like that.
Yeah, I know you do. So what? I just don't get it. Why doesn't Mullen just say, I'm sorry, it was just so easy. Hey, when I said it, I was shooting off my mouth, a really stupid thing to do. I shouldn't have done it. I'm really sorry. That's all it would have taken. But he's not. I'm not going to say he's not man enough because I don't want to question anybody's manhood. I will just say I have found a lot of guys not man enough to just stand up and say I screwed up. I guess that's, as Jim said, that's the Washington we live in now.
Yeah, that is the Washington we live. He might come after you if you do question, in fact, his manhood. This was not a.
If he does, he better take off his ring. And I would just say I'm a lot bigger than I look on TV.
Oh yeah,
sneaky tall. They tell me in the airports.
He's got a bit of a reach too. Yeah, no, he can do it.
It's a 6'4" reach.
Yeah, no, I know. No, get your hands up.
Actually, oh my God. Okay, stop.
Yeah. So
like
this
was not
1880
guys in baby.
Both one of these. So this was not a hearing as usual, to be clear. Now there are some real outstanding questions here. First of all, we heard very little of his vision to run through DHS, to be sure. There's questions about some of the money that the senator has made in recent years since taking office. There are questions about some of these apparently classified trips he claims he took while a member of the House in the last decade or so. Those are still things being explored. But of course, the headlines, this confrontation with Rand Paul. And Paul said, we were carrying it live yesterday. Paul came out swinging. It was a blister. Pardon the pun. It was a blistering opening statement there in which he really laid into Mullen. And that was a moment. You're right. You're right, Joe. Jim Vandehei, of course, is right. That in Washington past, the nominee would sit there and say, look, you and I may have our differences, but I'm sorry for what I said. Of course, I don't condone violence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The temperature lowers. We proceed. That did not happen yesterday because in Donald Trump's Washington, at least for Republicans who want to serve in his administration, you never apologize, period, for anything. And that was the tone that was set yesterday. The main tense. His nomination still seems on track. But, Mika, this was an extraordinary moment, not something we usually see in these proceedings.
I know, and there's much more to share on that later. Just one point to make, that Teamster leader, the whole belt buckle thing, they did patch things
They're
up.
friends
And
now.
he was sitting right behind him in the hearing. There is that. For whatever it's worth. Let's get to our top story this morning. Strikes on major energy facilities across the Middle East are sending oil prices surging this morning, now 20 days into the war with Iran. Israel hit Iran's giant South Pars gas field yesterday, which is part of the world's largest gas field and Iran's biggest source of natural gas. Iran is now retaliating, targeting energy infrastructure throughout the Gulf. Qatar says a key natural gas site was attacked, suffering extensive damage from missile fire. Saudi Arabia reporting downing Iranian drones targeting its natural gas facilities, later adding that one hit an oil refinery earlier today. Kuwait says drone attacks sent 2 oil refineries ablaze, and the UAE temporarily shut down operations at crucial energy sites amid missile interceptions over the area. In a social media post last night, President Trump said, quote, no more attacks will be made by Israel on South Pars if Iran stops its retaliatory attacks on Qatar. If Iran does not stop, Trump said, the United States will, quote, massively blow up the gas field. Elsewhere, Palestinian officials say at least 3 people were killed and several more injured during an Iranian missile attack that damaged a makeshift hair salon in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. The town's mayor said the salon had been full of women getting their hair done ahead of the festival marking the end of Ramadan. The Israeli military blames an Iranian missile carrying cluster munitions for the deadly attack. And Joe, as we get up to date on all that's going on, this does not seem to be, this seems to be only moving forward and spreading wider.
Well, there was Piers Morgan had tweeted something that several thought leaders on the right echoed and have echoed through the night. And what Piers wrote was, it looks like President Trump is losing control of this war. Richard Haas, oil facilities and energy facilities in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE bearing the brunt, Kuwait, Qatar, you can keep going down the list. These are areas that the president did not want hit. The president does not want energy infrastructure hit. I doubt, I could be wrong, but I doubt it's good for him and the war for Israel to level the southern half of Lebanon. I'm just curious whether Marco Rubio spoke the truth. That still seems to be the case, that, you know, we had to attack Iran because Israel was going to attack Iran. And it just seems that, again, you know, Donald Trump has one goal, and that goal, it seems to me, is to be able to declare victory with the straits open. Bibi Netanyahu's goal, it appears to me to be forever war. And to just continue this war. And it appears, you tell me whether I'm wrong or not, it appears that he and the president's interests stopped lining up quite some time ago in this war. And Bibi Netanyahu continues to expand the war in places that the president doesn't want it to be expanded.
Joe, spot on. If there's a parallel for what Israel is now doing, I would say it's Gaza. This is now an open-ended war. It's to relentlessly go after the leadership. There's not an exit strategy. There's a continuation strategy. The tactics, if you will, are the strategy. You know, Israel is in the region. It is not particularly concerned about global energy consequences or global strategic consequences. It is not heavily involved in defending Taiwan or thinking about Ukraine. The United States has global economic and strategic interests. They are not the same as Israel's. The president last night seemed to have supported the Israeli attack on the South Pars gas field in Iran before he opposed it. There was no reason to greenlight this. This should not have happened. Israel should not have been allowed to undertake this. This is war widening in every sense, both geographically, but also its escalation. And look what's happened now. All the facilities in the region are now potential or actual targets. This was exactly the scenario we wanted to avoid. So instead of thinking about exit strategies or off-ramps, now we've got to think about how to manage or prevent further escalation. This is becoming now a nightmare. This is a war of attrition that's growing rather than shrinking. And you're right, coming back to where you began, U.S. and Israeli interests here are diverging fundamentally, but also the president needs a strategy. And Israel has one, we don't, and that's a problem.
For sure.
And make no mistake of it, Benjamin Netanyahu's strategy, as it has been for years, is to keep fighting. Keep the war going. We've been saying this for years.
Yes.
The New York Times, I think about 6 months, maybe a year ago, Jonathan Lemire wrote an article, a huge article, quoting people all around Netanyahu. He never wants war to end because when war ends, he faces political repercussions and still may be voted out or sent to jail. And voted out because, again, I know nobody wants to remember this, but Benjamin Netanyahu was the Israeli leader that allowed Hamas to thrive, funded Hamas indirectly through Qatar, demanded that Qatar pay Hamas billions of dollars, even hundreds of millions, like 3 weeks before the attacks of October the 7th. And so his goal, never have that inquiry, never have the inquiry as to why more Jews were slaughtered on October 7th any day since the Holocaust. And he was prime minister, and it took him 12 hours to respond in some places to these attacks. Why do I keep going on? Because if you want to understand the war, you need to understand what people close to Benjamin Netanyahu and what we've been saying, what the New York Times wrote a massive piece on, what his view is of this war. It must continue. It must continue, or he will face some music from the courts and the Israeli people, no matter how popular he is right now in war. And so he doesn't care, Jonathan, whether gas goes up to $200 a barrel. He doesn't care about the things that Donald Trump cares about. So again, he's flattening, it looks like, half of Lebanon, and he's attacking all of these energy infrastructures. And what does that do in return? As Piers Morgan wrote, and as many other people have said, it's had Iran firing back and knocking out, going after energy infrastructure in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and, of course, the UAE. And so, again, Israel's interests are not Donald Trump's interests. Benjamin Netanyahu's interests are not Donald Trump's interests here, and yet he just keeps going. Richard asked, Richard said Israel should not be allowed. Israel should not be allowed. I don't think Israel's listening to anybody right now.
No, in the nearly 2.5 years since the October 7th attacks, Prime Minister Netanyahu's goal has been to widen conflict, expand the conflict. Gaza, elsewhere in the region, and now fulfilling some hope he's had for decades, take it to Iran. And there does seem to be a real divergence here from what's happening in Israel and Washington. And that played out last night. And I woke up this morning to a number of messages from people very concerned that the war has hit a new place, a very dangerous place. So in that same social media post that Mika read from a moment ago, President Trump denied that the United States knew in advance that Israel would be striking the Iranian gas field. Several reports, however, contradict that, including the Wall Street Journal, which wrote in part this: the U.S. was informed of the plan ahead of time and had no issues with it, both American and Israeli officials said Wednesday. The story goes on. President Trump approved of the strike, U.S. officials said, to pressure Iran to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. The officials said Trump believed Tehran received the message and wants to refrain from further strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure. We shall see. And Richard, and you argue in your latest Substack that the Strait of Hormuz, it must be open for all or closed to all. So I want you to explain that, but let's just underline what happened last night. The strike on Iranian energy, a big deal, but then Iran's retaliation across the region, particularly the one in Qatar, which is the world's largest LNG site. And it was apparently, per officials there, sustained extensive damage. Some people, some of the messages I woke up to said this already is going to change the energy picture for the globe for years. Right. What's already happened. There could be more. And we are seeing this morning oil energy prices skyrocketing again.
For years, people have to understand that energy facilities are remarkably complex and vulnerable. It's not also as though you have massive warehouses next door with spare parts. Mm-hmm. So when things come out of commission this way, you're looking at months or more likely years. And this has all sorts of implications for inflation. It's going to make it much harder, for, among other things, for the Fed to do what the president wants when energy prices go up. Politics. Food prices around the world are going to skyrocket. Why? Because fertilizer, which depends upon access, it's made in large part in energy, is going to go up. So this will have ripple effects. The Gulf countries themselves are going to take years to recover. Their sovereign wealth funds, big investment vehicles are going to have to increasingly invest at home to rebuild facilities. The knock-on effects of this are just enormous. Yeah. So basically this war now, which was a regional war, has become a global war with all the knock-on effects of that. What happened last night, I hope you're wrong, but I fear you're right, Jonathan. May have been a turning point, because now we got to, in some ways, what the metaphor is, put the genie back in the bottle. We've got to stop this war widening geographically and this war escalation. Ideally, you'd have a no attack on water desalination plants and no attack on energy fields. And what I'm worried about is that barrier now has been broken, and it's going to be very, very hard to restore it.
Yeah, for sure. Much more ahead. We've got other news to cover as well. Still ahead on Morning Joe. We'll turn to the Director of National... Welcome back. We're going to get back to the war in Iran in just a moment and the impact on world economies and the price of basically everything. And Richard wants to talk about options of opening up the Strait of Hormuz. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, TSA agents continue to work without pay as a partial government shutdown continues, and the extremely long security lines at some airports around the country are not likely to improve anytime soon. Data obtained by ABC News reveals nearly 10% of TSA agents called out sick on Tuesday. Atlanta and New Orleans were hit the hardest, with nearly 40% of agents calling out at those two airports. For context, typically, only about 2% of TSA officers call out on any given day. Democrats, meanwhile, are taking new steps to fund the TSA amid the partial government shutdown. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries unveiled a discharge petition yesterday aimed at forcing a vote on legislation to fund the TSA, FEMA, and the Coast Guard.
This is day 33 of the Trump Republican shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. Why is this happening? It's because Republicans have decided to force TSA agents to work without pay, inconvenience millions of Americans across the country, and create chaos at airports rather than get ICE under control.
So ICE is being funded, and TSA at a time that we possibly need them the most, when the threat of terrorism is looming, not paid. The effort is a long shot, as Democrats will need at least 4 Republicans willing to sign the discharge petition to force the bill to the floor. So, Joe, Republicans, I think they benefit from TSA agents as well in terms of the safety of their travel. This is insanity.
Well, you know, they have to be hearing from the White House, kill funding. Do not allow Democrats to fund TSA agents for their work. Do not allow Democrats to fund Coast Guard workers for their work, because that's exactly what's happening. Democrats keep going to the Senate floor, asking for unanimous consent to allow TSA workers to get paid for the work that they're doing. We've been through this before. Republicans shut down the government and were getting their paychecks 6 months ago, whatever the government shutdown was, getting their paychecks when they weren't working, while Americans who were working weren't getting their paycheck. It's happening right now. Now, just so you know, sometimes things are complicated and confusing. I understand, you know, in the age of X and TikTok, sometimes
this is not confusing.
This is not confusing. Democrats keep going to the Senate floor, and all the Democrats call for unanimous consent. Everybody in the chamber, hey, let's all agree right now, we're going to pay our TSA agents. Republicans kill it. I want to say it again for you. I want to say it again because people, sometimes there's so much coming at you, it's very easy to be confused. If everybody agrees on something, they can pass it with unanimous consent. So Democrats keep going to the Senate floor. Yesterday, it was Senator Warnock. Stand up and ask, hey, can we all just agree here, please, that our men and women who work for the TSA get their paychecks today? Stop having to work for free. Can we just all agree on that? Republicans stand up and say no and kill the paychecks. Stop them. Not only for them, but for the Coast Guard, for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, like at a time
Yeah.
We need the Coast Guard and the TSA and FEMA the most. Republicans keep killing it. Why? Why?
They keep playing with fire.
Because do you know why they keep killing those paychecks? Because they simply refuse to agree to the reforms needed to get past what happened under Kristi Noem. What many people in the White House want to continue. And that led to what looked like execution-style murders of Americans in the streets of our very own country at the hands of this agency. And Republicans are saying we would rather ICE agents not get paid. We would rather our men and women who bravely serve in the Coast Guard not get paid. We would rather FEMA
ICE
workers
agents are
not
getting
get paid for their work. Right.
Yeah.
Not get paid for their work. We would rather basically tell them to drop dead, to go to hell, than actually ask ICE agents to reform. You know, Jim, Mika sent me a video. It was a Fox News video. So let's just go straight to the source here. A Fox News video of a bomb threat in Central Park. Somebody started screaming bomb, bomb while they ran around the park.
Yeah.
As we have been saying all along, you compare what ICE agents did up in Minneapolis with what the NYPD does every single day. It puts ICE to shame every time. This guy's running, group of people yell bomb, bomb. Instead of 5 ICE agents going like this and like tuggling and pushing women in the snow, a New York City cop tackled the guy, had him on the ground, had his arms behind his back. Other cops surrounded him quickly. And if the guy had a bomb, they knew they would be blown up. But they all ran to it. And then what did the other cops do? They formed a circle. And what did they do? They didn't scream, get back, in their mask. They politely asked people, go, hey, can you move back? You don't take pictures. Dangerous situation. While some guy screaming bomb, 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 bomb. It was just the ultimate professionalism. What you would want to see from law enforcement officers that we all see, most of us see in our hometowns. But man, not ICE. And yet Republicans are willing to kill payment for TSA agents, Jim, because they don't want ICE to reform.
I mean, if you wonder why people think politicians suck and that government is useless, just look at the last couple of days. Like, the average person is now trying to go to the airport. In some of these airports, you have to get there 4 or 5 hours in advance. Like, who knows intuitively to get there that early? Now you're also going to be paying more for your airfare because it takes fuel to fly a plane. Then you go to get in your car, and gas is soon going to top $4 for a war that wasn't completely explained to you, or maybe explained at all to you. So no wonder people are frustrated. And Republicans can say, well, it's Democrats. Sorry, like, you own the government. You run the White House, the Senate, the House. With power comes responsibility. With responsibility becomes blame. And I think that's why Republicans are having a hell of a time in a lot of these elections. It's why they're worried that they're going to lose the House, now might lose the Senate. It's why the president's favorable ratings hover around 40%. Nobody wants this. People want competence, whether it's at the local level, at work, or from government. Like, just do your damn job, and then people are happy. If you're not doing your job, people are hacked off.
And make no mistake, Mika, this could end today. If when Democrats stand up and say, hey, can we all agree? Can we all agree that our TSA agents need to be paid? That our Coast Guard members need to be paid? All they have to do, because all Democrats support that. And the Republicans keep killing these opportunities to pay these people for the work they're doing to keep us safe.
Yeah.
In the air, on the seas. I mean, this is not hard. Again, all of this is to allow ICE to continue being the out-of-control, reckless agency that it was under Kristi Noem. And I just, for the life of me, I don't understand why Republicans are screwing their own constituents every single day business people that have to fly, families that have to get home to see their mothers or their fathers or the grandmothers or the grandfathers, parents that need to get to their kids to help with a child that may be sick. I mean, why are Republicans doing this? Why are they stopping this? Why is ICE so important to them that they are screwing their own constituents to protect guys in masks?
What
it's
is
not
the
worth
obsession
it. Take
with
the
the
masks
very
off.
unpopular ICE?
Look and see what the NYPD does, and maybe train for a little while.
But the problem is, Joe, this is a matter of life and death in terms of funding TSA. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
But with this war widening, with this war that I don't think anyone saw coming or predicted or understands, this is a matter. It's not just about paying people for the work they do and the economic suffering of the American people, which is, of course, politically incredibly important. But this is a matter of life and death. This is going in the wrong direction. Someone needs to wake somebody up and say, listen, you're going to have a reaction to this war that you started on American soil, and you aren't going to have the people in place to deal with it or prepare for it or prevent it. It is a massive disaster waiting to happen. Wake up. Talk about the Strait of Hormuz. We'll do that ahead. And also still ahead, Joe mentioned Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia will play for you some of his floor speech, calling out the Trump administration over the so-called Save America Act. Why the conservative Wall Street Journal editorial board just might agree with him. That's coming up on Morning Joe.